Welcome to you all. My name is Ollie Leggett and I'm the Managing Director and founder of IE Design Consultancy. We're a multi-award winning design agency, brand and digital, and we help educational clients connect with their audiences and tell their story to the world. I'm also joined today by Maddie McGowan from
Hello.
Cranfield University. She is the Director of Marcoms and Development at Cranfield, and I've had the pleasure of working with Maddie since April last year on re-expressing the Cranfield University brand. So the first 18 or so minutes is going to be me chatting to the microphone here, and then we're going to move on to an interview with Maddie, and then we'll ask questions at the end of the session. So here's our title. We're here to unpack the flurry of recent university rebrands that have elicited a critical backlash from students and alumni alike. We're going to look at what, if anything, went wrong with those, and also what lessons we think that we could possibly learn. Then, with Maddie's help and with the Cranfield case study as our key reference point, we're going to unpack 3 principles of successful audience engagement. First, I wanted to ask, does anybody recognise this number? Hope you can see it, 26,355. Whether you recognise it or not, this is the number that has brought you here today. As higher education sector executives, managers, marketeers, it's a number that we should both feel strikes fear into us, but also motivates us to wrestle with this whole question of brand. It's the number of HEIs, that's higher education institutions in the world today. So if we pause there just for a moment, that is an epic number, isn't it? The global scale of competition in our sector. And then in the UK alone, there are 287, almost 300 universities with over 120 big players with 1,000 plus students on roll. Now, with the advent of the internet, easy access to air travel, an extended period of world peace, and the arrival of new and emerging economies, our industry has never been as global as it is today. And this is the sector's contribution to the economic output of the UK. I'm going to set that 3.9 billion in context. It's 3% of UK GDP. And when you compare that to something like agriculture, it's 4 times the size of agriculture. So in addition to our worthy motives of wanting to drive up the levels of education across the world and wanting to improve, therefore, standards of living, it has to be acknowledged that protecting our slice, our share of your institution's income in this way, that your share of that number, or your country's equivalent, is what keeps us employed. But like every other lucrative marketplace, competition, I think you'll agree, is fierce and has never been more fierce. The clamour for the best talent, and I include students, academics, executives, managers, people like us in the room, it's intense. And so we must differentiate our institutions. If we are to secure our share of both the talent and the revenue, then we've got to find ways of distinguishing our university from the other 26,354 out there. Now, assuming we manage to win the talent battle, we then got to deliver against the rising tide of expectations. So as fees have risen, so now more than ever before, students and their parents, they're really looking for a measurable return on investment, as they should be. And that's in terms of academic quality, in terms of the facilities that are on offer. And most importantly, I think the single greatest factor influencing university choice outside of location and reputation is employability. Graduate employability, student outcomes are what it's all about. Okay, so as a sector, as a group, as an industry, how have we responded to these fast-changing external pressures? I think, in all honesty, many of us are simply working harder and faster to cope with the pace of change and the number of channels that we now have to communicate through. We try to spend more when budgets allow, and we try to shout louder. But that, honestly, is not going to cut it. In a fiercely competitive, fast-growing, increasingly digital global marketplace, where expectations have never been higher, success is dependent upon distinctiveness and brand loyalty. And I think distinctiveness is all about standing for something. We need to be clearer than ever what our story is, what our narrative is. And brand loyalty, well, that's about finding a story that our audiences believe in, not just that we believe in, one that they want to participate in and belong to. It's that elusive emotional connection, if you like, that will ensure that when it comes to the moment of decision, that it's our brand, our university, that's front of mind. So what is brand anyway? I'm going to spend just a couple of moments on this. Simon Middleton, the self-appointed brand guru, he says this about brand. I'll let you read it. People get fixated, don't they, on logos, but your brand is everything. Everything that your students, your alumni, your academics, your professional services staff and stakeholders think, feel, say, hear, watch, imagine, suspect, or even hope about your university. That's your brand. That's beginning to get there for me in terms of a definition. But I always think that the best definition of brand, the most helpful metaphor, is always that of a real person, because we can all relate to real people. So just indulge me for a moment as I unpack that metaphor in a slightly light-hearted way. So let's say that you hear a name like Ollie Leggett. It may be that you've stumbled across the name through a business network or a mutual friend. It sounds a little bit familiar. You don't know his mum or dad, so you're unfamiliar with the parent identity. But you begin to build a mental picture of him. You check him out on LinkedIn, you begin to notice his name coming up in conversations. Still no photo, no visual identity at this stage, but lots of information that's giving you some clues as to his identity and a sense of who he is, his brand, including his early years in the north of England, his embarrassing teenage years as a spandex-clad figure skater, his recent love of running, and his abject failure to find success as a figurative sculptor. So then finally you meet this brand, you meet this person. He's obviously younger and far more attractive than you'd ever imagined. You'd imagined maybe dark hair and a beard, but he's mousy and clean-shaven. You share some interests. You maybe enjoy a little bit of an overlap in social circle, and you begin enjoying his company and introducing him to others. This is what happens with brands. So you'll now happily defend his reputation amongst your peers. You've become his friend. You choose to spend time with him, to be influenced by him. You're loyal to him. You know that he values your friendship, and a part of your own identity is now bound up in that friendship. This is the journey that people go on with brands. His appearance, his visual identity, thankfully now, is just a tiny slither, a tiny little bit of your understanding of who Ollie is. And it's less important than the emotional engagement that you've begun to enjoy. And it's emotional engagement that I think is the holy grail of brand. That is where brand loyalty starts to kick in.